They told her the forest had already taken her son. 48 hours had passed, the maps were finished, the machines were silent, and the professionals were preparing to walk away. But a mother stayed. A soldier on leave listened to a dog everyone else had written off. And that dog stopped at a place no one had searched. Because sometimes God does not answer through technology. Sometimes He answers through loyalty, through instinct, through a heart that refuses to give up. What happened next did not just save a child. It reminded a broken town that miracles still happen when faith steps forward and fear steps aside. Winter lay heavy over Pine Hollow, Montana, a small forest-edge town pressed against endless pines, frozen ground, and a sky so low and gray it seemed to mute sound itself. Noah Whitman disappeared on a Thursday afternoon, the kind of afternoon that later felt cruel in its simplicity. He was 8 years old, slight in build, with sandy blonde hair that never stayed neat and curious gray eyes that missed very little. Noah was a quiet child, polite without being timid, the sort who listened more than he spoke. He wore a dark blue winter coat, worn boots, and a knit cap pulled low against the cold. He told his mother he was going to walk toward the tree line behind their neighborhood, just far enough to see the old warning sign nailed to a pine trunk, then come back before dinner. It was a routine he had followed before. Detective Laura Whitman watched him leave from the front steps of their house. Laura was 36, tall and lean, with dark brown hair pulled back in a simple tie and a face shaped by restraint rather than softness. Her eyes carried the permanent alertness of someone who had learned that calm was something you practiced, not something you felt. She wore her department jacket out of habit, the badge resting over her heart like armor. To her colleagues, Laura was dependable, disciplined, and precise. She did not raise her voice, did not hesitate, and rarely shared anything personal. To Noah, she was careful and protective, sometimes overly so, shaped by the loss of her husband 3 years earlier in a logging accident deep in the same forest that now framed their town. That loss had sharpened her instincts and hardened her boundaries, teaching her that control was the only thing that kept grief from spreading. When Noah didn't return by dusk, Laura told herself it was nothing. Children lost track of time. The forest had paths. Pine Hollow was small, but when night fell and her phone calls went unanswered, her training gave way to something colder. She reported him missing herself, her voice steady, her words exact, as if she were describing evidence instead of her own child. The response was immediate. Pine Hollow's patrol officers moved quickly, their familiarity with the terrain an advantage they trusted. The sheriff's deputies established a search perimeter near the trailhead. Volunteers arrived from nearby homes, bundled in winter coats, speaking in hushed voices. A forest ranger coordinated routes with practiced efficiency. By morning, drones were deployed, their cameras scanning treetops and ravines for movement or heat. They found nothing. The forest reflected only itself. K-9 units arrived from neighboring counties by midday. Their handlers were confident, professional, brief in their assessments. The dogs worked hard, circling, tracking, stopping, then starting again. Each trail ended the same way, scattered scent, disrupted by wind, frozen soil, and roots that twisted beneath the surface. One handler shook his head quietly and said the conditions were bad. Another said the forest was old. None of them said what Laura already understood. 48 hours passed. Snow fell lightly during the second night, just enough to erase what little trace might have remained. Radios crackled with updates that led nowhere. Search grids expanded, then overlapped, then collapsed under their own weight. Technology failed, experience failed, procedures failed. The forest did not resist, it simply absorbed every effort without response. Laura moved through the command area like a figure carved from restraint. She coordinated teams, reviewed maps, answered questions. She did not cry. She did not sit. She did not allow anyone to speak to her like a grieving mother. Inside, Something was changing. The certainty she had always relied on, that if you searched hard enough, you would find the truth, was beginning to fracture. The forest did not care about process. It did not respect urgency. It did not yield to authority. By the second evening, the tone shifted. Volunteers grew quiet. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Someone said the word exposure. Someone else said probability. Laura shut both down without raising her voice, but she felt the weight of those words settle anyway. She stood at the edge of the trees, staring into the dark where Noah had last been seen. Her breath fogged the air. Her hands were clenched inside her gloves, fingers numb. She thought of her husband then, of how the forest had taken him too, not violently, not dramatically, but completely. She had learned to live with that loss by convincing herself it was an exception. Standing there now, she understood how wrong she had been. The forest was not cruel. It was indifferent. It did not take. It simply did not give back. Behind her, Pine Hollow waited. Houses glowed dimly through the trees. Parents held their children closer. People whispered prayers they had not spoken in years. The town felt smaller than it ever had, as if pressed inward by the weight of the trees surrounding it. As night deepened and the search teams prepared to pause until morning, Laura remained at the forest's edge, unwilling to leave, unwilling to accept that silence was an answer. The forest did not respond. It stood still, ancient and unreadable, as if deciding whether this story would end where it began, or demand something more from those who refused to look away. Caleb Morgan arrived in Pine Hollow without announcing himself, driving an unmarked pickup that carried the dust of long highways and the quiet weight of someone who preferred not to be noticed. He was 39, broad-shouldered and solid, in a way that suggested strength built for endurance rather than display. His hair was cut close, dark with streaks of early gray, and his face bore the weathered calm of a man accustomed to decisions that did not allow hesitation. Caleb was a Navy SEAL on leave, though the word leave felt misleading. He carried himself like someone still on duty, eyes always moving, posture unconsciously guarded. The time away from his unit was meant to be rest, but rest had never come easily to him since a mission 2 years earlier had ended with a decision he could justify on paper, but never fully forgive in memory. He had chosen extraction over pursuit. Lives had been saved, but one had been lost. That knowledge had reshaped him, sharpening his restraint and deepening his silence. In the passenger seat sat Iron, a German shepherd with a presence that filled the cab even while lying still. Iron was 7 years old, large and powerfully built, his black and tan coat marked by a pale scar along his shoulder where shrapnel had once torn through muscle. His ears stood alert even at rest, and his amber eyes missed little, tracking movement through the windshield with disciplined patience. Iron had been a military working dog, trained for tracking and threat detection, and though he was officially retired after his injury, nothing in his posture suggested complacency. He had learned to wait without relaxing, to observe without distraction. Caleb trusted Iron more than he trusted most people, not because the dog was flawless, but because he was honest. Iron reacted only when something demanded it. Caleb had not planned to stop in Pine Hollow. He had intended to keep driving north, to find quiet somewhere beyond the reach of familiar faces. But at the edge of town, he saw the searchlights cutting through the trees and the cluster of vehicles near the forest road. He slowed, then stopped. The shape of the operation was unmistakable to him. Missing person, prolonged search, fading hope. He listened from a distance, leaning against his truck as radios crackled with updates that carried more exhaustion than information. He did not step forward. He had learned when to stay out of things that were not his responsibility. Iron was the one who broke that resolve. The dog lifted his head sharply, body tensing as if a wire had been pulled tight beneath his skin. His nose tested the air through the open window, drawing in slow, deliberate breaths. A low sound rumbled in his chest, not a growl, not a bark, but something focused and restrained. Caleb noticed immediately. Iron did not react to noise or crowds. He reacted to patterns. Caleb followed Iron's gaze toward the tree line. The forest stood dark and dense, unchanged from the night before, yet Iron's attention did not waver. When Caleb clipped the leash on and stepped out of the truck, Iron moved with purpose, pulling gently but insistently toward the trees. His movements were controlled, precise, not the erratic behavior of an anxious animal. This was tracking posture. Caleb felt the familiar tightening in his chest, the one that came before missions when instinct spoke before orders. Near the command area, a woman noticed them. Detective Laura Whitman had not slept, and it showed in the tension of her shoulders and the tight set of her jaw. She was still in uniform, her hair pulled back, her face composed with effort rather than ease. She watched the man and the dog approach with professional caution. She had seen dogs come and go over the past 2 days, had watched each handler shake their head in quiet apology. She was done with false hope. Caleb stopped several steps away, respectful of the boundary. He did not offer credentials. He did not introduce himself. He simply stood there, Iron at his side, the dog's focus still locked on the forest behind her. Laura noticed that before she noticed the man. She saw the way the dog's body aligned toward the trees, the way his attention did not drift. That dog is working, she thought, before she allowed herself to stop the thought. She approached, her tone controlled. She asked what unit he was with, where he was from. Caleb answered briefly. Navy SEAL. On leave. Passing through. He did not say more than necessary. He did not offer help. He had learned that offering help invited questions, and questions invited responsibility. He was not here for that. Iron chose otherwise. The dog stepped forward, pulling the leash taut, nose low to the ground now, drawing an invisible line toward the forest road. A deputy moved to block them out of habit, but Iron did not react to the man. His focus did not break. Laura raised a hand, stopping the deputy without looking away from the dog. She asked how long Iron had been retired. Caleb said retired was a word used for paperwork, not behavior. He said Iron had been trained to track in environments worse than this. He said nothing about guarantees. He had learned better. Laura hesitated. She had been trained to trust procedure, to rely on consensus, to avoid singular instincts. But she had also learned that some things could not be solved by repetition. The forest had already proven that. She looked at Iron again, at the scar, at the steadiness, at the absence of confusion. This dog was not searching randomly. He was responding. She did not authorize a search. She did not redirect teams. She did not announce anything. She simply told Caleb he could walk the perimeter, stay outside the active grids, observe. It was a small concession, one she could justify as harmless. She told herself it was nothing. Caleb nodded. He did not thank her. He clipped the leash shorter and let Iron lead. They moved along the edge of the search area, past where the footprints ended, and the forest began to close in. Iron's behavior changed as the trees thickened. His movements became slower, more deliberate. His tail lifted slightly, his ears angling forward. He paused, circled once, then continued, pulling away from the marked paths. Caleb felt the shift, too. The forest here was older, quieter. Sound died quickly beneath the canopy. He remembered terrain like this from missions overseas, remembered how easily it swallowed men who underestimated it. He followed Iron without correcting him, trusting the training that had once kept them both alive. Behind them, Laura watched longer than she intended. She told herself she was monitoring a civilian. She told herself it was curiosity. But when Iron stopped abruptly and let out a single, sharp exhale through his nose, Laura felt something stir that she had tried very hard to bury. Not hope? Not yet. Something closer to recognition. Iron had found something. Not a location, not a body. Something else. A disturbance, a wrongness. Caleb knelt, studying the ground. The signs were subtle, nearly invisible to anyone not trained to see them. A broken branch that did not match the surrounding damage. Snow compressed in a pattern that suggested weight, then hesitation. Iron's nose hovered inches above it, unwavering. Caleb straightened slowly. He did not speak. He did not signal. He simply let Iron continue, deeper into the trees, farther from the noise of radios and voices. He knew better than to draw attention before he understood what Iron was telling him. Behind them, Laura made a decision she could not yet explain. She followed at a distance, far enough not to interfere, close enough not to lose sight of them. She did not radio it in. She did not ask permission. She told herself she was observing. The forest remained silent. But for the first time in 2 days, it was no longer empty. Laura Whitman had learned long ago how to stand without leaning, how to keep her shoulders square even when her body wanted to fold inward. On the 3rd morning since Noah disappeared, she stood in the temporary command room set up inside the Pine Hollow Ranger Station, hands braced against a table covered in maps, her eyes tracing lines that no longer meant what they once had. The room smelled of burnt coffee and damp wool. Voices moved around her in low currents, careful, restrained, as if volume itself might shatter what little control remained. She was still in uniform. The jacket fit her the way it always had, structured and familiar, a shape that reminded everyone, including herself, who she was supposed to be. Her face showed the cost of the last 48 hours in subtle ways, shadows beneath her eyes, a tightness at the corners of her mouth. But she did not look fragile. Laura never did. She had grown tall and lean working patrols straight out of the academy, her body shaped by long shifts and mountain terrain, her demeanor sharpened by years of responding to emergencies where calm mattered more than comfort. Since her husband's death, that calm had hardened into something more severe. She did not let people close easily. She did not ask for help unless it was necessary. And she did not break down where anyone could see. The maps told a simple story that refused to change. The primary grids were exhausted. Secondary paths had been searched twice. Drones had flown until their batteries ran out and then flown again. The K9 reports sat in a neat stack, each one ending the same way. No viable trail. Laura read them anyway, as if repetition might reveal something the first dozen readings had not. Captain Robert Hale stood across from her, arms folded, jaw set. Hale was in his early 50s, broad through the chest, his hair cut short and already thinning. He had risen through the department the slow way, respected procedure, trusted experience, and disliked improvisation. To most of the town he was steady and fair. To Laura he was a reminder of boundaries. His voice was even when he spoke, but there was steel beneath it. "We need to talk about scope," he said. He did not raise his voice. He did not have to. Laura did not look up. She knew what was coming. She had known since the night before, when the tone of the radio traffic had shifted from urgency to management. She replied with facts. Weather conditions improving, visibility better, the forest still unstable for scent. She argued that shrinking the search now would be premature. Hale listened, nodding once or twice, then slid a folder across the table. Inside were the county guidelines, highlighted, annotated, already prepared. Resources were limited. Risk to personnel was increasing. At some point, hope had to be balanced against safety. He did not say the words out loud, but they hung there anyway. Probability of survival was dropping. Laura finally met his eyes. For a moment, the room felt smaller. She thought of Noah's jacket hanging by the door at home, of the cereal bowl left in the sink because she had been too distracted to clean it. She thought of the way the forest swallowed sound. She told Hale she understood the guidelines. She told him she disagreed with the timing. She told him she would take responsibility for any additional risks. Her voice did not shake, but something in it changed. Hale heard it. He sighed, the sound of a man who did not want to be the one saying no. "You're too close to this, Laura," he said, not unkindly, but firmly. The words landed harder than she expected. Too close, as if distance were something she could choose, as if motherhood were a variable that could be adjusted. She straightened, her hands flattening against the table. "This is my job," she said, "and it's my son." Hale's expression tightened. He glanced toward the door, where a couple of deputies stood, pretending not to listen. He lowered his voice. "If you keep pushing outside approved parameters, I will have to remove you from command. Temporarily." He emphasized the word, but the meaning was clear. Suspension was not out of the question. Laura nodded once. She did not argue further. She knew when a wall would not move. She gathered the reports, stacking them neatly, a habit she had developed after her husband's death, as if order on paper might translate to order elsewhere. She thanked Hale for his time and stepped outside into the cold. The forest loomed beyond the station, dark and unmoved by the conversation that had just taken place. Laura stood on the steps for a long moment, breathing in air that felt sharper than it had the day before. She told herself to think. She told herself to step back. She told herself to be a detective first. But her body refused to obey. A deputy approached, a young man named Evan Brooks, fresh from the academy, his face earnest and uncertain. He told her quietly that some volunteers were being released for the day. He asked if there were any changes to assignments. Laura thanked him and told him no. Brooks nodded and left, relief and confusion mixing on his face. She walked toward the edge of the command area, her boots crunching softly on frost. That was when she saw them again. Caleb Morgan stood near the tree line, iron at his side. They were farther in than before, just beyond the marked boundary, not interfering, not asking permission. Caleb's posture was relaxed but alert, weight balanced, attention fixed on the dog. Iron was still, nose lifted slightly, body angled toward a section of forest the maps labeled as already cleared. Laura watched from a distance, telling herself she was only observing. She noticed how Iron did not pace or pull. He waited. She noticed how Caleb did not talk to him, did not correct him. Trusted silence. It was different from what she had seen with the other dogs. Less frantic, more deliberate. She remembered what Hale had said. Too close. She remembered what the guidelines required. She also remembered standing in this same forest 3 years ago, listening to a ranger explain how accidents happened, how no one was to blame, how sometimes terrain simply won. She had accepted that explanation because she had needed to survive it. Now survival felt secondary. Laura walked closer. Caleb noticed her approach but did not move. He waited until she spoke. "They want to shut this down," she said. Her voice was quiet, stripped of rank. "If I keep pushing, I lose command." Caleb nodded once. He did not offer advice. He did not tell her what to do. He simply said that Iron was reacting to something inconsistent with a standard search pattern. He said he could not tell her what it was yet. He said only that the forest was not empty in the way people thought. Laura looked back toward the station, then toward the trees. She felt the weight of the badge on her chest, the responsibility it represented, the cost of defying it. She also felt the absence of her son like a physical ache. "If I follow you," she said, "they'll say I crossed a line." Caleb met her gaze. "Sometimes lines are the problem," he said. She stood there for several seconds, listening to the quiet, to the distant murmur of radios, to her own breathing. Then she made a decision that did not feel brave or reckless. It felt necessary. She told herself she was stepping back to observe. She told herself she was gathering information. She did not radio it in. She adjusted her jacket, took a breath, and stepped past the boundary markers into the forest. Iron moved forward immediately, as if waiting for permission that had nothing to do with rank. The forest closed around them, swallowing the sounds of the command area behind. Laura did not look back. For the first time since Noah vanished, she felt something other than fear pressing against her chest. It was not hope. Not yet. It was resolve, sharpened by the understanding that whatever happened next, She would be present for it. Badge or no badge. Iron moved first. The moment Laura stepped past the boundary markers, the German shepherd leaned into the leash and pulled forward with quiet force. No pause, no uncertainty. His body lowered into a working posture, shoulders rolling smoothly beneath his thick black and tan coat. The scar along his shoulder flashed pale against dark fur as he passed through brush, then disappeared again. 7 years old, retired on paper only, Iron moved like a dog who had never stopped being on duty. Caleb followed immediately. He shortened the leash by instinct, not to restrain Iron, but to stay connected. He said nothing. Talking wasted time. Iron was not searching. He was tracking, and the distinction showed in every step. His nose stayed low, sweeping tight, efficient lines. No wide arcs. No backtracking. This was not a rescue pattern. This was pursuit. The forest swallowed them fast. Within moments, the sounds of radios and voices vanished. Pine needles muffled their steps. Branches scraped fabric and fur. The air grew colder, heavier. Pine Hollow's forest thickened as they moved deeper, trees crowding closer, light thinning into shadow. Laura followed several steps behind. Her movements were controlled, precise. She kept her balance on uneven ground, adjusted pace without instruction, avoided snapping branches. Tall and lean, she moved like someone used to patrol, not panic. Her hand hovered once near her radio, then dropped. She did not call this in. She already knew how that conversation would end. They crossed beyond the last visible search marker without stopping. There was no line, no sign, just a change in terrain. Here, the forest showed fewer signs of casual movement. No footprints, no broken twigs from wandering volunteers. Iron angled left, away from the obvious path, choosing thicker cover. Caleb noticed immediately. Iron was avoiding exposure. They moved faster now, not running but decisive. Iron led them along faint hunting trails barely visible beneath frost and needles. Old paths, forgotten ones. He followed them briefly, then cut away again, choosing routes that offered concealment. Someone else had done the same. Iron stopped hard near a cluster of young pines. His body locked. Caleb dropped into a crouch without thinking. The ground looked undisturbed at first glance. Then he saw it. Snow pressed down, shallow but deliberate. Weight placed, shifted. Someone had stood here. Not long, just long enough to decide. Laura crouched beside them. She did not touch the ground. She did not speak. She watched Iron. The dog circled once, tight and controlled, then stopped again, nose fixed on a point near the base of a tree. His tail lifted slightly. Focus narrowed. Iron moved off the trail and into dense brush. Branches scraped his coat. He ignored them. His pace remained steady. Caleb followed, stepping over roots, ducking low branches. He glanced back once. Laura was still there, jaw set, breathing controlled. She nodded once. No hesitation. The terrain dipped into a shallow ravine. Iron slowed. His breathing grew deeper, louder. The scent was stronger here. Concentrated. Not fresh, but contained. Caleb felt it too, the shift from possibility to direction. At the base of a fallen tree, Iron stopped again. The trunk lay half-rotted, roots torn free years earlier. Beneath it, the ground dipped slightly, creating a shallow hollow. Iron sniffed the air, then the earth, then the exposed roots. A short, sharp huff escaped his nose. Confirmation. Caleb scanned the area. The signs were clearer now. Branches broken and placed back into position. Ground disturbed, then smoothed. Someone had passed through here carrying weight and had taken time to hide their trail. This was not careless. This was practiced. Laura straightened slowly. Her eyes moved over the ground, then back to Iron. This was no longer a search for a lost child who had wandered too far. This was something else entirely. Iron moved again, climbing out of the ravine toward higher ground. His head lifted now, sampling the air. Each step slowed, deliberate. He was close. They crested a low rise and stopped. Ahead, partially hidden by trees and brush, stood a structure. Old, man-made, nearly swallowed by the forest. Its roof sagged inward. The walls leaned, dark with rotten shadow. From a distance, it blended into the forest. Up close, it did not. Iron froze. His body went rigid, ears forward, tail level. No bark, no growl. He stared. Caleb felt the warning hit immediately. This was not a place Iron wanted to rush. This was a place that demanded caution. Laura stepped closer. She recognized the structure now, something she had seen once on outdated county records. Abandoned, deemed irrelevant. Never searched because it did not fit the expected pattern. Iron took one step forward, then stopped again. His nose lifted, testing the air around the structure. Whatever he sensed was nearby. Not resolved, not gone. Caleb tightened his grip on the leash just enough to maintain control without pulling Iron back. He did not reach for a weapon. He did not signal retreat. He trusted the dog's judgment over any plan that had already failed. Behind them, the forest remained silent. No radios, no backup, no permission. Only instinct, pulling them toward something the search had missed. Caleb stopped them short of the clearing. He raised a hand, palm closed, and Iron halted instantly, body tense, head forward. The logging camp sat ahead like a forgotten scar in the forest, its outlines uneven and slanted, wood darkened by age and moisture. Snow gathered in shallow drifts around the structures, disturbed in places where wind cut through gaps between buildings. This was not a place people stumbled into by accident. Laura stepped up beside Caleb. Her face was tight now, the controlled calm from earlier replaced by something sharper. She did not ask what he saw. She knew better. She watched Iron instead. The dog's focus had narrowed, his movements economical, his attention fixed on the space beyond the nearest shack. Caleb asked for Noah's jacket. He kept his voice low, even. Laura froze for a half-second, then nodded. She reached into her pack and pulled out the small blue coat, folded carefully, as if handling it roughly might damage more than fabric. She handed it to him without comment. Caleb knelt and held the jacket out. Iron moved in immediately. His nose pressed deep into the cloth, breath slow and deliberate. His posture shifted in seconds. The alert tension became something else. Engagement. Direction. This was no longer a general track. This was specific. Iron lifted his head and turned sharply, pulling away from the main clearing. Caleb followed without hesitation. Laura moved with them, boots crunching lightly on frost. The dog led them behind the largest structure, past stacks of rotting timber half buried in snow. Iron ignored the obvious path between buildings and cut closer to the tree line, nose low, pace quickening. The scent was stronger here. Caleb could see it in the way Iron's movements tightened, the way his breathing deepened. This was not the path of a wandering child. This was controlled movement. Someone had passed through here deliberately, used the camp as cover, then moved on. They crossed the clearing's edge and entered denser forest again. Snow thinned beneath the trees, broken by dark patches of earth and crushed needles. Iron slowed, circled once, then continued, choosing a narrow route between trunks that offered concealment. Caleb recognized the pattern immediately. This was how he would move. This was how he had moved. The realization hit him harder than he expected. He had not thought about that training ground in years, the one they never named, the one marked only by coordinates that were later scrubbed. A forest like this, logging structures abandoned but intact, temporary shelters, places meant to exist just long enough to matter, then vanish from memory. He remembered being told the area was inactive, decommissioned. He remembered thinking the word sounded final. Iron stopped again near the edge of a shallow slope. His body angled forward, tail level, ears fixed. Caleb crouched and studied the ground. Snow pressed down in uneven patterns, not fresh, not random. Weight had been applied, then adjusted. Someone had paused here, long enough to change direction. Laura knelt beside him. She did not touch the ground. She followed Iron's line of sight instead. Her jaw tightened. She understood what this meant without needing it explained. The camp was not the destination, it was a waypoint. Iron moved on, leading them along the slope and back toward the structures from a different angle. He traced the perimeter, nose working steadily, confirming rather than searching. The scent looped the camp, then cut inward again, closer to the oldest building at the far end. Caleb's pulse picked up. He remembered another structure like that one, years ago, half collapsed, used briefly during a training exercise meant to simulate pursuit in denied terrain. He remembered how easy it had been to miss what mattered because they had been told where not to look. Iron stopped near the building's shadow. He did not go inside. He did not bark. He stood still, nose lifted, testing the air. The scent was strongest here, pooled and layered, buried beneath cold and time but unmistakable. Laura felt it then, the shift from possibility to certainty. Whoever had brought Noah here had not stayed long. This was not a holding place. This was a transfer point. She looked at Caleb. He was already scanning the area, reading lines in the snow, angles in the trees. He did not speak about tunnels. He did not mention structures beneath the ground, but something in his expression told her this forest held more than it showed. Iron took a step forward, then stopped, waiting. He looked back at Caleb, then toward the trees beyond the camp. The trail continued, away from the buildings, away from anything obvious. Caleb stood and clipped the leash shorter. He placed a steady hand against Iron's shoulder, grounding him. The dog did not resist. He waited for direction he already knew was coming. Laura straightened and took one last look at the camp. To anyone else, it was just an abandoned logging site, another forgotten remnant of a dying industry. To her now, it was proof. Proof that the search had been looking in the wrong places, asking the wrong questions. She reached for her radio, then stopped. Not yet. Calling this in would slow everything. She was done losing time to caution that had already failed. Iron shifted his weight forward, muscles coiled. The scent did not end here. It moved on, deeper into forest that had already proven it would not give up its secrets easily. Caleb nodded once. They left the camp behind without looking back, following a trail buried beneath snow and silence, unaware of how close they were to something far more dangerous than any of them had yet imagined. The forest grew quieter the farther they moved from the abandoned logging camp, not silent, but muted, as if sound itself had learned restraint. Iron led with steady urgency, pulling them along a narrow route where snow thinned beneath tangled roots and exposed earth. His pace was controlled, never rushed, but his focus had sharpened. Whatever he was following was closer now. Laura felt it in her body before she understood it in her mind. The air seemed heavier, the ground more uneven. She adjusted her steps automatically, years of patrol training guiding her balance. Her uniform jacket was streaked with dirt and pine needles now, her breath shallow but even. She did not think of herself as brave in that moment. She thought only of Noah and of the fact that turning back would mean choosing uncertainty over action. Iron slowed near the base of a massive pine, its roots thick and exposed like knuckles clawing out of the ground. Snow gathered unevenly around the trunk, disturbed in ways that did not match the rest of the forest floor. Iron circled once, nose close to the earth, then stopped. His body went rigid, not alert, not alarmed, certain. Caleb knelt beside him. He did not touch anything at first. He studied the ground, the angles of the roots, the way dirt had been pushed and then carefully covered. This was not the work of animals. This was concealment. His jaw tightened as recognition settled in. He had seen entrances hidden like this before, places designed to disappear into the landscape, meant to be overlooked by anyone not trained to doubt the obvious. Iron pressed his nose between two thick roots and inhaled deeply. His breathing changed, louder now, more insistent. He pawed once, scraping away loose dirt and needles. Beneath it, something solid resisted. Concrete. Old. Weathered. Almost indistinguishable from stone. Laura stepped closer, heart pounding. She brushed dirt aside with her gloved hand and felt it too. A flat surface, a straight edge where no straight edge should exist. She froze, then forced herself to breathe. This is it, she thought. Not the end, but the door. Her radio crackled suddenly, sharp and intrusive in the quiet. Captain Hale's voice came through, controlled but strained. He asked for her location. He said the search was being scaled back due to safety concerns. He ordered her to return to the command area immediately. Laura closed her eyes for a brief second. Hale was not wrong by the book. This was beyond protocol, beyond jurisdiction. A concealed structure in the forest meant unknown risk. It meant waiting for specialists, for clearance, for time Noah did not have. Caleb watched her carefully. He did not interrupt. He had lived through moments like this, where decisions carried weight no briefing could prepare you for. Iron remained fixed on the ground, paw resting against the hidden surface, eyes flicking briefly toward Laura as if sensing the tension. Laura answered the radio with measured calm. She acknowledged the order. She did not argue. She did not explain. When she finished, she lowered the radio and did not clip it back onto her jacket. Her hand trembled slightly before she steadied it. She looked at Caleb, then at Iron, 7 years old, retired, scarred, still working. If she walked away now, she would follow the rules and lose her son. If she stayed, she would cross a line she might never uncross. The choice did not feel dramatic. It felt simple. She knelt beside Iron and placed her hand briefly on his back. His muscles were tense but controlled, heat radiating through his coat. She trusted that more than any map or command. "We're not leaving," she said quietly. Caleb nodded once. No approval, no praise. Just acknowledgement. He shifted his position and examined the edges of the concealed entrance. The roots and dirt masked it well, but time had weakened the seal. This had been used before. Not recently, but not ancient either. Iron scraped again, more insistently this time. Loose earth fell away, revealing more of the concrete slab beneath. The entrance was small, utilitarian, designed for function rather than comfort. A place meant to be passed through, not occupied. Laura's radio crackled again. This time she turned it off. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Caleb tested the edge of the slab with careful pressure. It shifted slightly, enough to confirm what they already knew. Beneath the roots, beneath the snow, beneath the years of neglect, the forest had been hiding something man-made and deliberate. Iron's focus did not waver. His breathing deepened, the scent clearly stronger now, funneled downward. He was not confused. He was not guessing. The trail continued below. Laura felt fear rise, sharp and immediate, but it did not paralyze her. Fear had followed her for days now. This was different. This was fear with direction. She thought of Noah's habit of counting when he was scared, of the way he always trusted her to come when he called. She had promised herself she would never lie to him about safety, never tell him everything would be fine when she did not believe it. Now she believed something, fragile but real. Iron stepped back half a pace and looked at Caleb, waiting. He did not move again until Caleb placed a steady hand on his shoulder. The bond between them was silent and precise, built over years of trust, forged under pressure. Caleb exhaled slowly. He thought of the sealed reports, the training sites declared inactive, the assumptions that had allowed places like this to be forgotten. He thought of the man lost years ago, buried under collapsed concrete, while paperwork said the site was secure. Not again, he thought. Laura stood and took a final look around the forest. The light was fading, shadows stretching longer between the trees. Every instinct she had as an officer told her to call this in, to wait, to do it by the book. Every instinct she had as a mother told her the book was wrong. She chose the instinct that mattered. Iron stepped forward again, paw resting against the edge of the concealed entrance, eyes fixed on the darkness beneath the roots. He did not bark. He did not growl. He waited. Together they began to clear the remaining dirt and debris, uncovering what the forest had tried so hard to hide. Whatever lay beneath had been waiting a long time. Laura felt the weight of the decision settle fully now. There would be consequences. There always were. But for the first time since Noah vanished, she felt something else alongside fear. Certainty. The air changed the moment they moved past the concealed entrance. It grew colder, heavier, carrying the smell of damp earth and old metal. Iron descended first, controlled and steady, nails clicking softly against concrete, worn smooth by time. Caleb followed close, one hand firm on the leash, the other free. Laura came last, breath measured, mind clear in a way it had not been for days. Fear did not disappear. It narrowed, the tunnel sloped gently downward, just wide enough for one person at a time. The walls were rough, reinforced in places, unfinished in others, as if the builders had expected to return and never did. Water dripped somewhere ahead. Iron's posture shifted again, urgency sharpening his movement. The scent was strong now, unmistakable. Not old, not scattered. Close. Caleb signaled a halt with a raised fist. Iron stopped instantly, muscles tight. Caleb listened. Faint movement. A scrape. A breath not their own. He moved forward one step at a time, placing his feet carefully, using the curve of the tunnel for cover. The passage opened into a small chamber supported by rusted beams. A lantern sat on a crate, its light weak but steady. The space smelled of oil and cold air trapped too long underground. In the corner, behind a stack of tarps, something moved. Noah. He was crouched low, knees pulled tight to his chest, his blue jacket zipped all the way up, hat pulled down so far it nearly covered his eyes. Dirt streaked his face, and his hands shook, but he was breathing. He was alive. The sound that left Laura's chest was silent and violent at the same time. She dropped to one knee without thinking, her balance gone for a second she could not afford. Iron moved instantly, stepping between Noah and the rest of the chamber, body angled outward, ears forward. He did not bark, he did not growl. He stood guard, a wall of muscle and intent. A man stepped out from behind a support beam. He was tall and lean, early 40s, with a narrow face, and hair cut short in a way that suggested habit rather than style. His jacket was worn, practical, stained with grease and mud. His eyes were sharp, restless, the kind that measured distance and exits without conscious effort. His name was Daniel Price, though no one in the tunnel knew it yet. He had worked maintenance for the county years ago, long enough to learn which structures were forgotten and which records were incomplete. He spoke softly, as if volume itself might bring the walls down. "Easy," he said. "No need for anyone to get hurt." Caleb did not answer. He stepped laterally, placing himself between Price and Laura without breaking eye contact. Iron shifted with him, maintaining the barrier in front of Noah. The dog's teeth showed now, just slightly, a promise rather than a threat. Price's gaze flicked to the dog, then back to Caleb. He lifted his hands halfway, palms open, but his stance stayed balanced. He was not panicking. He had not expected this, but he was not unprepared. "I was keeping him safe," Price said, voice steady. "I know these tunnels. I knew where to hide him until things cooled down." Caleb heard the lie in the cadence. He had heard it before, in different languages, in places farther from home. He did not debate. He did not threaten. He waited. Laura's voice cut in, sharp and controlled. "Noah," she said, "it's Mom. Don't move. Stay right there." Noah looked up then. His eyes widened, then filled. He did not run. He did not cry out. He stayed where he was, exactly as he had been taught. Iron glanced back at him briefly, then returned his focus to the man in front of them. Price shifted his weight. Caleb saw it instantly. He moved at the same time Iron did. Iron lunged forward just enough to force Price back a step. Teeth bared now, a low growl vibrating through the chamber. Not an attack. A warning. Price's foot slipped on damp concrete. Caleb closed the distance in 2 strides, striking fast and clean. The impact drove Price into the wall. Caleb took him down without flourish, using leverage and momentum, forcing his arms behind his back before he could recover. Price struggled once, then stopped. He knew when he was beaten. Laura moved past them, dropping fully to her knees beside Noah. She wrapped her arms around him, careful, controlled, checking him without overwhelming him. He clung to her jacket, shaking but whole. She pressed her forehead to his hair and breathed. Caleb secured Price, binding his wrists with a length of cord from his pack. He kept his body between the man and the others, eyes never leaving him. Iron returned to Noah's side immediately, sitting close, his presence solid and calm. Noah's shaking slowed. Footsteps echoed in the tunnel behind them. Voices followed. Backup, finally. Deputies moved into the chamber, weapons drawn, eyes wide as they took in the scene. Captain Hale appeared at the rear, his expression tight with relief and something else he did not name. Caleb stepped back, hands visible, control intact. He said only that the child was alive, and the suspect was secured. Hale nodded once, professionalism snapping back into place. The deputies took Price into custody, lifting him to his feet and escorting him away without ceremony. Laura did not let go of Noah until a medic knelt beside them. Even then, she stayed close, one hand on his shoulder, grounding him. Iron remained seated at Noah's side, alert but relaxed now, his work done, but his duty not yet complete. As they moved toward the exit, light from above cutting into the darkness, Laura looked back once. The tunnel lay quiet again, empty of threat, stripped of its secrecy. She did not feel triumph. She felt closure beginning. No one had been left in the dark. Spring reached Pine Hollow quietly, without announcement, as if the forest itself were uncertain it was allowed to soften after what it had taken, and returned. Snow retreated from the ground in uneven patches, revealing dark soil and the first stubborn green beneath the pines. The air warmed just enough to change how people breathed. Less fear, more room. Noah Whitman came home wrapped in blankets and careful hands, carried out of the forest the way fragile things are carried when they matter more than pride. He was thinner, quieter, eyes watchful in a way children should never have to learn, but he was alive. That fact anchored everything else. Laura did not let go of him when they reached the edge of town. She kept one arm around his shoulders as paramedics checked him, as questions were asked, as the world tried to restart. Her face was pale, her posture exhausted, but her grip never loosened. She had brought him back. Nothing else mattered in that moment. Iron stayed close, sitting beside Noah with disciplined stillness. His ears tracked movement, his body angled outward, alert but calm. The work was finished, but the watch remained. Noah leaned against him once, tentative at first, then with trust. Iron did not move. He had guarded soldiers in worse places. Guarding a child was easy. Captain Hale handled the aftermath with the precision he had always relied on. Reports were filed. Jurisdiction questions were addressed carefully. Laura was questioned, formally and privately. She answered honestly. She did not justify her choices with emotion. She spoke in facts and outcomes. The child was found alive. The suspect was secured. The risk had been real, but the delay would have been fatal. Hale listened, his expression unreadable, then closed the file. "You crossed lines," he said, "but you brought him back." Laura nodded once. She did not argue. She had already made peace with the cost. Hale paused, then added that the department would stand behind her actions, not publicly, not loudly, but firmly. Laura kept her badge. She kept her career. More importantly, she kept her son. Caleb watched all of this from the edges. He did not attend the briefings. He did not speak to reporters who arrived late and hungry for meaning. He stayed where he was most useful, helping where asked, stepping back where not. The forest had taken something from him years ago, something he had never named aloud. Watching Noah walk out alive felt like a quiet correction. Not forgiveness, but balance. Iron remained at his side, posture easing day by day. The tension in the dog's shoulders faded with the snow. His movements grew slower, less coiled. For the first time since Pine Hollow, he slept deeply. Weeks passed. Winter gave way to early spring in fragments. The town adjusted. The logging camp was sealed. The tunnel was secured and documented. Daniel Price was charged. The story settled into something people could talk about without lowering their voices. The forest returned to being just a forest, dangerous but familiar. Caleb planned to leave. He told himself that was always the plan. Pine Hollow had been a stop, nothing more. But plans softened the way the ground did. Laura and Noah invited him to dinner once, then again. The meals were simple. Conversation was quiet. Noah listened more than he spoke, but he laughed sometimes, especially when Iron rested his head on Noah's knee as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Laura changed too. The sharpness that had defined her after her husband's death eased. She remained disciplined, controlled, but something warmer returned beneath it. She slept more. She smiled without effort. She allowed help when it was offered. Caleb noticed these things without naming them. He noticed the way she watched Noah from the kitchen, the way her shoulders relaxed when Iron was near. One evening, as snowmelt fed the streams and the light lingered longer than it had in months, Caleb stood at the edge of the forest with Laura beside him. They did not speak about what had happened. They did not need to. The forest stood there, unchanged, but no longer threatening. It had let them go. Caleb realized then that the memories that haunted him had loosened their grip. The mission that had ended badly, the man they had not reached in time, the report that said it was over when it never felt finished. Saving Noah did not erase those things. It gave them context. It reminded him why he had chosen this life in the first place. He stayed, not because he needed redemption, not because Laura asked him to. He stayed because sometimes endings were not about leaving. Sometimes they were about building something quiet in the space left behind. By summer, Pine Hollow looked different. Not transformed, just lighter. Caleb and Laura moved carefully at first, two people who understood loss too well to rush toward anything new. Noah adjusted to the rhythm of days without fear. He grew louder. He argued about bedtime. He ran again, always within sight, always with Iron nearby. Iron took up his place by the front door, a silent sentinel. His coat shone in the sunlight. The scar on his shoulder remained, pale and unremarkable, part of who he was. He did not need praise. He did not need ceremony. He needed only to know his people were safe. The forest watched them from a distance. Trees stood where they always had. Roots gripped the earth. Life continued. Pine Hollow did not forget what happened there, but it no longer carried it like a wound. Some endings arrive loudly, announced by sirens and speeches. This one did not. It arrived in shared meals, in evenings spent on the porch, in the quiet understanding between two people who had survived what should have broken them. When the forest let them go, it did not give permission. It gave peace. In this story, the forest did not answer machines, maps, or rules, but it answered faith, the faith of a mother who refused to walk away, the faith of a man who trusted the purpose God had already written into his hands. The faith placed in a loyal companion who never forgot why he was created to serve. The Bible tells us that God works in ways we do not expect, through people and moments the world often overlooks. A retired dog, a tired soldier, a broken path in the woods. Yet nothing was random. Every step led to life, not because humans were perfect, but because someone chose to believe when fear said stop. In our daily lives, we all face forests of our own. Moments when logic fails, when the answers do not come, when silence feels heavier than noise. This story reminds us that faith is not the absence of fear. Faith is choosing to move forward anyway. If you are walking through a hard season, remember this: God has not forgotten you. He may already be preparing a path beneath the roots where no one else is looking. Sometimes the miracle begins the moment you refuse to give up. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment to tell us what part moved you the most, and if you believe that faith still brings light into dark places, type Amen in the comments. Please subscribe to the channel so we can continue sharing stories of courage, grace, and quiet miracles. May God bless you, protect your family, and guide your steps today and always.